Welcome to Impact Thursday Night. My name is James Trevette with Whitestone Christian Ministries, and I'm happy to be here with you tonight. Thank you for coming. And tonight we're going to continue on with the message that we started a week ago. And the message is the Beast of Revelation, and this is going to be part 2. So there's a lot of things going on here in part 1 that I'd like to summarize as we start, because I want to set the context for this part. This is going to be a very intense message, but it is going to be videotaped so that you can come back and look at it and pick out the parts that you maybe want to see again. So let's start immediately into a review from part 1. And in the review, these are the comments as a summary of much of the things that I taught in part 1. And I think it sets the context. It says the beast is made up of people, possibly multinational and multicultural. This is out of Revelation 17. The first thing we must understand is the beast isn't some monster that's out there, and it's not some just spiritual thing. It is actually made up of people. The beast is actually a set of people that are doing something upon the face of the earth. And as we study it, we'll look and see who these people are. It says the beast is a government that will gain power to rule over all the earth, from Revelation 13:7. So the key to understand about the beast is it's about government. And it's an important thing to understand because Jesus Christ is about government. He's coming back as king. And this beast is wanting to take his place, and therefore it wants to set up a government also. And it's been given authority in the Revelation that it's literally going to gain power to rule over all of the earth. The beast is an Antichrist, Isaiah 9:6, and this is a follow-up to what I just said, that Christ is going to be king over all of this earth, to rule and to reign. So the beast is the dragon's attempt to try to build a government that he can rule over himself. So in a way, the beast is an imitation of the bride of Christ, or his government. The beast hates the people of God and will turn the governments of nations against them. Because the beast knows that we are the destined government, he obviously hates us very much. And he's going to do what he can to wipe us out. So as he begins to take control, he's going to try to eliminate. Every time you see the beast come up, he'll always persecute God's people. And we've seen that in history, and we're going to see it even in these last days as the beast takes over. To understand the beast, you need to understand the dragon, Revelation 13. It's the dragon that this is about. The dragon is, of course, Lucifer, Satan, the devil. So this dragon is literally in control of the beast. So to understand what the beast is trying to do, you need to understand who the dragon is and what his goal is. We learned in Isaiah 14 that the dragon, Satan, does not want to be like God, like it says. He wants to be God. We looked at the scriptures in Isaiah 14 that says, I will raise my throne above the heavens, above the stars and the clouds, and I will make myself like the Most High. But in reality, he's not making himself like the Most High, because if he was, what would he be like? Yes, he'd be like us. He'd be love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. That would be, if he's like God, that's what he'd be like. So does he want to be like God? No, he wants to be God. He wants to take the very place of God. And he wants the beast to take the very place of the church. The beginning of the beast can be traced back to the beginning of man and man's government, Genesis 3. So at the very beginning, when the dragon was, of course, that old ancient serpent in the Garden of Eden, we look and see that he deceived Adam and Eve into giving them his authority. And he deceived in the same way. You will be like God. But was he going to help Adam and Eve be like God? Was his goal? No, of course not. Because he's not wanting to be like God either. He just wants to be God, and he wants to deceive mankind into putting in him to the role of God. And that's what he did in the Garden of Eden, and that's what this beast is all about. It's mankind being deceived into building a government that is to be the rule and reign of the dragon, Satan himself. The strategy of Satan is to deceive man through the beast into building his own throne over all the nations. Genesis 11. And that reference, of course, is Babylon. And we saw what happened in Babylon. That they decided they were going to come together. And of course, this is our first world government. So they're going to do great things, right? They're going to, of course, put an end to hunger. And they're going to educate the people and all this. Is that what they said? They may have said that, but what did they end up doing? They ended up building a tower. So why would they want to build a tower, and what did that represent? Well, the tower was a representation of government. That's all it was. They were building a large government. He says, let's get the people together. What we need is a large government. Now, why did the people want to build this large government called the Tower of Babel? Well, if the dragon had anything to do with it, and we know that he did, he was talking them into building this so that when they actually got this tower built all the way to the heavens, then he would step in over top of it and be ruling the world. So his goal is to deceive mankind into building this kingdom for him, and then he's going to step in and take control. So it's all about the deception. Of course, that's what he's been about from day one in the Garden of Eden all the way through Revelation. He's there to deceive mankind, to do his work for him, to build the kingdom so that he can come in and rule in the place of Christ. That's why he's the Antichrist. So any questions on this part so far? This is just a review, of course, from last time. But I think it sets the context as we move forward. Revelation 17. We're talking about the beast again in Revelation, and I want to, we talked about this in the last class, but I want to add some more parts to this discussion. In Revelation 17, it says, this calls from mind with wisdom, the 7 heads of the 7 hills on which the woman sits. There are also 7 kings. So as he's describing the beast here in Revelation, notice the heads actually have 2 different meanings. Or they have, let's just say, multiple meanings. So when you see the 7 heads, it represents these groups of people. Almost always the head represents groups of people. In this case, he even said it's 7 hills, which represents a particular group of people because it could be the 7 hills of Rome. So we know that the heads can represent multiple things. Then it says, in this case, there's 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. Well, we looked at that last week and discussed the fact that the first 5 were these empires, but they're not just any empire. These particular empires are empires that actually took control of God's people. If you look at each one of them, all the way back to Egypt with the days of Abraham, that when they were slaves to Egypt, all of these actually ruled over God's people, these heavens. And that's their goal, is to rule over God's people. It's not just to rule over any part of the earth, because remember, he wants to be God. So he's got to take over God's people and try to destroy them. And of course, the 6th one was Rome, which the one it is. It was certainly the is during the time the book of the Revelation's built, and it may actually be the is now, because the Roman Empire still exists, of course, through the Catholic Church. You have kept all the artifacts. The Catholic Church even keeps Latin alive. So that may actually be the kingdom now. And the 7th one could be the revived Roman Empire, but it's certainly going to at least morph, if not be built directly into a world kingdom. And notice it has 10 horns. Now, why would the beast have 10 horns and 7 heads? Well, the heads represent one thing, but the horns represent another. So as we go in, we'll try to understand that these can have multiple types of meanings in the kingdom. Because as we see, this beast isn't something for today. It existed all the way back to Egypt. Each of these heads represented a group of people, and they're all different people. The Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, these are all different people. So not only is it represent different people, but it represents different times. So we can see that the beast is actually something much bigger than just something we're going to see in the last days. Otherwise, how could it be Assyria and Egypt and all these other groups of people during that time? So let's continue on. We looked into Daniel, in Daniel 9. It's very revealing about Christ and the Antichrist, because it talks about the 77s, of periods of time, that are ordained Notice for who it's ordained for in Daniel 9:24. Decreed for your people and your holy city. So what is this whole thing of the beast about? It's about God's people and His holy city. So the Antichrist is going to do what? He's going to, first of all, he's going to have to create his own people and his own holy city. But his goal, of course, is to take over the holy people of God and God's holy city. So we go on to verse 25, and it says, "No one understand this. From the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild what city?" Remember, it was the holy city. So the city is clearly defined here as what the holy city is. It's Jerusalem. Until the anointed one, the ruler, comes. So who wants to be the anointed one, the ruler? If we know we're talking about Jesus Christ here, because that's His goal, then what's the goal of the beast? To be the anointed ruler. That's correct. So we can see that this is an Antichrist we're looking at. He's not only attempting to be against Christ, but he's attempting to imitate Christ. We go on to verse 26. It now talks about the Antichrist. It starts with the fact that the anointed one will be cut off and have nothing. And of course, that's Jesus Christ when His own people called for His crucifixion. And then it says, the people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And what city was that? Jerusalem. And the sanctuary, of course, was the temple. So, did that happen? Yes, it did happen in 70 AD. And it was the Romans, we can say. Or maybe it was the beast. It certainly was ahead from the beast. Continues on. In verse 27, it says, He will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. So, who's this he all of a sudden? The beast now, is it the beast? Well, I believe we're now narrowing it down to an individual, the Antichrist himself. That we know that he's going to confirm this covenant that's going to be with Israel, with many, that's going to occur for 7 years, that we believe is a peace treaty. We believe that this is the settling of the issue of Jerusalem that's going to take place. And it'll last for 7 years. Well, this man, who will be the Antichrist at some point, is going to be someone who signs this covenant, confirms the covenant. We don't know that he's the broker of the covenant, but we know that he confirms it, so he's a signatory of it. We don't know at this point how many Antichrists there are, because anyone that's standing in that role could be considered an Antichrist, as Jesus said in Matthew 24. But at one point, it looks like about halfway through this 7-year period, the Antichrist is going to be manifest. As it talks about in Thessalonians, it says that Christ is not going to return till there's a falling away, and the man of perdition is revealed. So there's an individual that's going to take place. We believe it's here, because not only did they build their own kingdom, and by the way, what is going to be the holy city for the Antichrist? Where's he going to start? Well, I believe he's going to start by building Babylon, because he's going to build an imitation. The beast is going to be the government, and Babylon's going to be his city. But at some point, it looks like halfway through this 7-year period, that's not going to be enough. And he's going to step into the holy city and actually into the temple and declare what he claimed he would do from the beginning. He's going to be God. So that's the goal of all this. And the beast is there to implement it, but it's mankind being deceived that's going to implement this. We looked in John 19, where God's own people said, "Crucify him." Pilate said, "Shall I crucify your king?" A nice prophetic statement here. And he says, "We have no king but Caesar." God's own people chose the beast over him. Caesar, of course, once again, is one of the heads of the beast. So moving forward, we brought Daniel into the picture from Revelation, of course, and now we have Daniel. And we want to look how these two line up, because they're adding information about this beast. It wasn't just in the Revelation. So to do it, we're going to start with the actual vision of Daniel, which was a statue. And this statue had, of course, the head, the chest, the waist, the legs, and the feet. And we want to see how that lines up with the 7 heads. And if you look at it, it lines up quite nicely, because this was, of course, in the time of Babylon, the 3rd kingdom. So therefore, this statue had 5 parts to be the remaining, 3 through 7. And if you look at them, they line up. We know that Babylon certainly was the gold head because it says it was, and that lines up with the third head of the seven. And as we go down, we'll see that those are the kingdoms, and that's why they line up. That helps define them. But when we get down to the sixth one, Rome, it's called an iron, 2 legs. And I've always wondered, I have not looked to really measure this out, but of course the body has certain proportions, and it makes you wonder if these kingdoms existed for a period of time that might be proportional to the body, because the legs are pretty long, and the Roman Empire has certainly existed for a long time. But it's going to come down to this feet of iron and clay, and it has 10 toes to line up with the 10 horns, of course, of the beast of Revelation. And this is the one that Jesus Christ is going to come and destroy, because it says that the rock will come and it will hit the feet and shatter it and then grow into a kingdom. Well, we know then that must be this world empire, and it must be this 10 toes or this 10 horns, and it's made up of iron and clay. So certainly it's made up a lot of what was in the legs, but now it has clay added to it. We're going to look at more meaning of this, but I do believe that this is telling us that Daniel's vision that was destroyed by Jesus does line up with the Revelation. And we can go to Daniel to find out much more about this beast. So let's go to Daniel 7. In Daniel 7, we're going to take a look at the beasts of Daniel. We looked at the statue, but Daniel also described 4 beasts. So let's look and see how these line up with the beasts of Revelation. Daniel said, "In my vision at night I looked, and there before me were 4 winds of heaven churning up the great seas." Now, first of all, does that line up with Revelation? Remember, there was the dragon standing on the shore, and the beast was coming out of the sea. So here we have a picture of some winds churning up the sea, which winds could represent something spiritual, and the churning of the seas, of course, is happening. Psalm 2 is a very beautiful example of that. Why do the nations rage? Who's stirring these nations up that are declaring this vain thing? Well, that's what's happening here. I believe the dragon is stirring up these nations. That's the great sea that's churning, as we learned in Revelation. 4 great beasts, each different from the other, came up out of the sea. So this is the beast comes out of the sea in Revelation. It comes out of the sea here. It comes out of the people. But this now has 4 beasts that are different. The first was like a lion. It had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted up from the ground so that it stood on its feet like a man, and its heart was given it. And I look at these beasts, and I said, boy, that certainly does look like something that exists today. What country would be the lion? Britain and England, that's correct. Because, of course, that's their emblem, is this lion standing up. You could say Babylon had this, but this one exists now even because it has the wings of an eagle. And I look at the wings of the eagle, and what country could that be? That could be us, because I look at this and say, well, wait a minute. We came from Britain, and it says that the wings were torn off and became its own, basically became 2 feet like a man and stood up and was given a heart. And I believe our country was given a heart. So that could very easily be England, the United States today. Now remember, yes, these beasts could represent things in the past, but they certainly are going to represent something also in the current time, because we are in the last days. And there before me stood a second beast, which looked like a bear. Now, if we look at this bear, it said it had obviously devoured some things, because it had these ribs in its teeth, and it was told, get up and eat your fill of flesh. So this bear has a desire to destroy, and has been given the ability to destroy and kill. So what country would be the bear if we looked at it today? Russia. Yes, Russia is always called the bear. Let's continue on. After that I looked, and therefore before me was another beast, one that looked like a leopard. And on its back it had 4 wings like those of a bird, which that word bird, if you look it up, it's a fowl. And a fowl is sort of a game bird, like a chicken, of course, is a fowl. The beast had 4 heads, and it was given authority to rule. So this beast also is a ruler. But he's a leopard. So what kingdoms or what nation might look like a leopard? It's a little tough, but Germany. Germany, of course, has led these different incarnations, if you will, in Europe to try to join those. And I believe that is an example of this leopard. Of course, the leopard tank is the tank of the EU now. But the leopard, I believe, is a symbol of Germany and the joining of Germany to form this, I guess you'd say, a German empire or the Reich. And we'll talk a little bit more about these wings of a bird, because if it has wings of a bird, is there a country that actually would have a fowl as their symbol? I don't think most people know that or realize this, but the fowl is actually a symbol for France. If you see all these pictures in the kitchens, you always see this little banty rooster. And that is a symbol for France. So this beast has Germany and France, and you say, well, they've been fighting a lot. They do, but they seem to end up together in a lot of things. They started together, by the way, with Charlemagne. After that, in my vision, I looked, and there before me was a fourth beast, terrifying and frightening and very powerful. So this fourth beast now is different than the other three. The other three were pretty much nations. You could say that the leopard was more of a little bit more of a kingdom. But this beast seems even greater. It says it had large iron teeth. So here's the iron that probably came from the Roman Empire. And it crushed and devoured its victim and then trampled underfoot what was left. It was different from the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. So if we look at these beasts, now this one has 10 horns. What does that mean? The other ones didn't say that it had multiple horns. Well, I believe because this beast is not like the others. It's different. It's a joining of different countries coming together. And I believe that this is the world government. And it has the 10 horns because it's been giving 10 regions or 10 heads. So we see these different beasts. And I'll show you the picture here, and you can look at them. And if you look at these beasts and you say, well, how does this compare to Revelation? First of all, let's count the heads. How many heads do we see? Well, of course, there's 1, and then there's the leopard with 4, and the lion with 1, and the bear with 1, which is 7 heads. And if we count the horns, what do we see? Well, there's 10 horns on one beast and none on the others. To me, that makes sense, because in Revelation, of course, it says it had 7 heads and 10 horns, and you're thinking, well, are the horns distributed? No, I think that's a picture of the way this one head is, and I believe that is the world government. In the other countries, you say, well, could they exist at the same time? Absolutely they could. As a matter of fact, if we look at Daniel 7, 11, and 12, an interesting piece of this. It says, I kept looking until the beast was slain and his body was destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. So this was the beast. This was the one with the 10 horns. So does this sound a whole lot like what happens when Christ returns? It's slain, and it was thrown into the lake of fire. But notice the other 3 beasts. The other beasts had been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time. So they continued to exist even after this one beast was destroyed. Why would that be? Because I believe the beast that was destroyed was the world government and the world empire. But these, as we saw, were more like individual countries that were allowed to exist in the kingdom of God for at least for a period of time. So Daniel's beasts must all exist at the time of the return of Christ. So this is not quite the same thing. Yes, now we're seeing the 7 heads representing something else. Yes, they represented these empires past, but now all 7 heads are existing simultaneously. And it's at the time of the return of Christ. If we go back to Revelation 13, when it describes the beast, it said, and the dragon stood on the shore of the sea. Of course, we talked about that. And I saw the beast coming up out of the sea, and it had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on the horns. So there it is again. Those horns represented 10 kings, but of one head. And then it says, the beast I saw resembled a leopard. So if you take these beasts and bring them together, how do they come together? Well, apparently whatever this beast is, it seems to look like the leopard. That means if we looked at the European Union as a model and said, well, maybe that's something that looks like the leopard, with Germany and France, of course, and their strength, then this particular beast looks like that. So I think we could see the EU as almost a model for this world government beast. And then it says its feet were like a bear. And of course it said that it trampled over things and destroyed them, and might represent military might. So maybe that represents the military might of Russia. It said a mouth like a lion, which is a hard thing to understand, whether that just means that this new world government speaks English, or maybe because of course Britain is the lion, or maybe it talks of peace, maybe it talks of freedom, the things of course that this country talks about. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. So you see the consistency here between Revelation and Daniel, because sure enough, these one beast looks a whole lot like the joining of these four. The beasts of Daniel line up completely with these beasts of Revelation. So now I've got a chart here comparing the two, and notice I did go ahead and say the lion was the USA and UK together, that the bear was Russia, the leopard was Germany, but it had four heads. So notice I put on there the four heads were the four Reichs. And I think that's what makes it a little different than just the Roman Empire. Then we go on down and find the seventh kingdom is once again the world government, and it's described here with 10 horns. So you see the consistency, only now it has iron teeth, which lines up with the iron and the clay and so on in the vision of Daniel. So I believe then, in the vision of Daniel, when it has the iron mixed with the clay, I believe the iron, of course, represents once again this, like the Roman Empire, or certainly the European empires. And the clay, though, I think, I've heard it said that they believe that that represents the church joined in with it. But I believe that the clay actually represents the other nations, that this is actually a world government. Because all indications that I read say that this beast rules the entire world. And all but those that are saved will pledge their allegiance to this beast before he's destroyed. So I believe he's a world kingdom. So I believe the iron is the picture of the body of the leopard. But I believe it's also all the countries that are joined in to form this one world empire. We continue on to look at the leopard. And I'm here describing Charlemagne, the father of Europe. And he united this whole Western European Union here back in the 800 AD. But the interesting thing was he was crowned by Pope Leo III, so he became the Holy Roman Empire. So there was a joining of church and state already happened with the Roman Empire. So therefore, this is nothing new. It's actually just a continuation to me of the Holy Roman Empire. He was crowned by God, it says, to Charles Augustus, crowned by God, mighty and pacific emperor, be life and victory. Yes, Leo crowned him, and he crowned him as a king. So there was a joining of what would supposedly be the church or God's people and this beast, just like it was in the Roman Empire before. So if we look forward, and by the way, it says the French and the German both considered him part of their lineage. See how that lines up with the leopard that had the wings of a fowl? We know that Charlemagne, of course, is what the European Union traces itself back to, because Charlemagne's name is everywhere, because he united Europe. The Charlemagne prize, Charlemagne this, Charlemagne that. And if you look back in the European Union, you'll see a lot of references to him. But here, of course, there's a King Otto who may be a part of the First Reich. Maybe the Germans liked Otto better than Charlemagne in that regard. But in one way or another, there were considered to be three Reichs in Germany that we've looked at. The First Reich was back in that period. The Second Reich was back during World War I. And Bismarck, I believe it's Kaiser Wilhelm, and some of the others tried to pull together, once again, the whole European Union or the Roman Empire. Notice once again that Italy was lining up with Germany during this time. And then, of course, World War II, which is the time of Hitler, which is called the Third Reich. And everybody's heard that it's called the Third Reich. And notice, once again, Italy lined up with Germany there to form this Third Reich. So I believe this could be the four heads. Well, what about the Fourth Reich? Well, I think there's a really good possibility that the European Union right now is that Fourth Reich, particularly if the Roman Catholic Church lines up with it very well, because it conquered or joined these countries together the same way. Hitler tried to do it with weapons, but now it's come together with peace. But that doesn't mean that it's not a kingdom, just like it was if it would have come together under the Third Reich. So the Fourth Reich, I'm considering it to be the European Union. So it's just a possibility to consider. Another way to look at the Fourth Reich is to look at the flag of all things, because the European flag has the 12 stars. And I know that you can go and find all sorts of arguments. Well, maybe they wanted to start with 15 or 14 or whatever. But the guy who designed the flag basically said, no, he did it with 12 stars. And he did it because of the book of the Revelation. It said, a woman clothed with the sun and a crown of 12 stars on her head. Now, for those who know, the Catholic Church considers that woman to be Mary. If you read the Revelation, those 7 stars, of course, would represent the 7 tribes of Israel, and this woman is actually Israel. But they say it's Mary because it gave birth to the Christ. Well, I believe Israel gave birth to the Christ, but they're saying, no, it's Mary, which is, of course, from the Catholic Church. So there's a link here to the church in this symbol. As a matter of fact, if you look at this statue in Brussels, which is the home of the European Union, it's at the cathedral there. It's a picture of Mary and Jesus, and there she is with the 12-star crown. That was the inspiration for this European Union. So this is just something to consider, that this might be the 4 heads. And if we continue on, I want to talk about this last head that has the 10 horns and what that might be. If we look back at Revelation 17, we've covered the first part of that, verses 9 and 10. Verse 11 says, the beast who once was and now is not is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. We're not sure what that means. That could be Babylon, because Babylon once was, it's not, and it's going to be again. And there's the king that they're referencing. It says it belongs to the 7, so we're not sure exactly what that is. But if we continue on, it says the 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom. Well, often it's taught that the 10 horns are from, of course, the European Union or the revived Roman Empire. And you can certainly make a case because the Western EU, which was founded in 1948, right, the same time when Israel, of course, became a nation, it had 10 countries, and it continues to have 10 principal countries. The Western European Union is actually considered to be the military arm of the EU, and it has 10 official countries. There's others that are members, but those are the ones listed as the principals. You could say, well, that's your 10 countries, but this says something different. It says that these 10 kings have not yet received a kingdom, so they weren't over a country. But it says only for 1 hour will they receive authority as kings along with the beast. So I believe if we look at this, particularly with verse 13, they only have one purpose, and that's to give their power and authority to the beast. So imagine that you're going to form a world government. How are you going to do that? Well, I think what's happened here is that they've decided to break the world up into these regions and assign these regional kings, if you will. And that gives people feel like it's our autonomy, we represent ourselves. Maybe it breaks down a little of the national barriers. Maybe the EU is a perfect model for one of those. But rather than take the EU and expand it to the earth, what if we just took the EU and said, this is a model because we've broken down the barriers between countries and no trade tariffs and so on, let's take that as a model and reproduce it throughout the world and form 10 regional areas. And the people we'll put over those will be called kings, if you will. But we know that the purpose of doing this is only one thing: to build this world empire. Remember, build the tower up so that the devil can come in and sit on top of it. It says they'll make war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will overcome them. So this is the end. This is that world empire. If we look at the Club of Rome, we'll notice they had already done this. They've divided the world into these 10 regions. And of course, the Club of Rome was the sort of founding of the European Union, common market, and so on. So they obviously had a global plan. The European Union themselves have actually done this. 10 EU world regions. This is right off the European Union website. So we can see that they've had a plan for this. We notice the current customs unions. Remember, this is, so what we're doing is we're saying, let's take a region and break down the barriers between the countries so that we can have free trade. Like we could, here in North America, we could have the North American Free Trade Act called NAFTA. And that's what they did. So we've basically, these free trade unions are already forming throughout the world. And of course, they will turn into these 10 regions that I believe will get the king for just a short period of time. But remember, the only goal is to give authority and power to the beast, the world empire. And notice the World Trade Organization also has their 10 regions. So all of this is pretty clear. They've all picked 10 for some unknown reason. And it certainly lines up better to me to be the iron and the clay coming together on the 10 toes that Christ strikes. It would also explain why the individual beasts or individual countries are allowed to remain for a while, but the world empire is not, the one with the 10 horns. So if we look at the beast of Daniel 7 and the beast of Revelation 17, we see they look a whole lot alike. It just adds clarity. Even though the beast can be over a period of time, in the end it's all going to be rolled up together into one thing, so that Christ can, of course, destroy this. Let me bring in just a side discussion here for our closing, and I'm going to bring something up called the Madrid Quartet. It's called the Quartet of the Middle East, sometimes called the Diplomatic Quartet, the Madrid Quartet, or just the Quartet. Now this is a group of countries and that have come together and says, what we're going to do is we're going to mediate peace. Where do you think? Where do you think they want to address the peace issue? Israel and, of course, Jerusalem. So who is this group? It says a foursome of nations and international supranational entities to mediate the peace process in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So what does that mean? That means that they're going to try to divide the land of Israel up and claim a peace treaty and set up a peace between Islam and Judaism and Christianity and Catholicism. So this group, interestingly enough to me, looks a whole lot like the beasts. As a matter of fact, if you look at the current representatives, Tony Blair is the spokesman. What did we know about the beast? It had a mouth like a what? What country was the lion? England. So he's the special envoy in the mouth. We notice the United Nations sure could look like the 10-horned beast. Now maybe it's not fully the world empire yet, but it could easily be morphed into a world kingdom at some point. But interestingly enough, they've come together because the countries are still interwoven with this entity, which the countries actually belong to the UN, but they're also individual. So how can these beasts exist simultaneously? How can you have iron teeth and still have a leopard? Well, the fact is, the countries can exist as part of the world empire, but they can also keep their own autonomy. And that's because they got the power to do it. And they're probably the ones involved in putting this world empire together. The European Union has their high representative, the Baron Ashton. Baroness Ashton, and I believe that would represent the leopard. The United States, the current Secretary of State, John F. Kerry, would be, of course, our eagle's wings. And Russia, Sergei Lavrov. So this surprisingly looks a whole lot like these beasts. It's totally amazing. So we can get an image here of how these things can all come together as one and yet still maintain a certain amount of autonomy because they're doing it here. And of course, what is it that they're trying to negotiate? The peace of Jerusalem and Israel. Who is going to bring peace to Jerusalem and Israel? Christ. So what do you think the Antichrist would want to do? Obviously, he's going to try to do the same thing. It says that the peace treaty is going to be brokered through the Antichrist. At least he's going to be a signatory of it. That's a major sign. Well, this is the group that's trying to negotiate that. Does that sound a lot like the beast to you? Tony Blair said, as of course the spokesman, that there's no workable alternative to a two-state solution but a two-state solution to the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. Divide God's land up. And that's what he says is the only way. So that is their goal. Notice it says, of course, that he's the negotiator for the United Nations, the United States, the European Union, and Russia. And then President Obama recognized this is a time to seize this opportunity. So they're definitely engaged in trying to divide the land of Israel. But if we read in Zechariah 12, it says, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding people, when they lay siege against Judah and Jerusalem." Well, guess what? They're laying siege right now. Now, maybe this is the end time war, but understand these prophecies keep repeating in images so that we'll clearly see what's happening. So right now, Jerusalem and Judea, which by the way is a lot of Judea, if not most of it, is part of the West Bank. So you can see that these negotiations, they're laying siege to it. And it shall happen in that day that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all people. And isn't that exactly what's happening? It is a cup of drunkenness. People are going crazy over this thing. It's a heavy stone. Everybody's tried to move this thing. And every president of the United States seems to want to do it. Russia's been involved in it. The European Union's been involved. Everybody wants a piece of the action. Notice it says, though, that all who would try to heave away this stone, try to get control of this thing and move it, it says will be cut in pieces, though all the nations of the earth are gathered against it. And we're lining up that way very quickly. Now, once again, remember when it says nations, it's not talking about all the people. Nations represent governments. The governments are lining up. So the word cut to pieces is the word sarat, which means to gash, to cut into pieces, or to make cutting. It actually it says that if you mess with dividing my land, then I'm going to divide your land. One sobering thought is a little news flash here from, actually it's back in February 24th. It says recent earthquakes are a reminder that the New Madrid fault is still active. Now, why would I bring that up? Well, where is the New Madrid fault? It's right in the middle of the country. It actually is underneath the Mississippi River. Notice it says that there's been earthquakes going on while we're out there trying to divide the land, shaking this territory. Hundreds of earthquakes there each year. And then it goes on and says that it was formed millions of years ago, and it was supposedly, they believe it's when the continents were trying to split apart. Of course, they didn't succeed yet. Some of the largest earthquakes ever to shake the United States happened there. As a matter of fact, it said that the river actually ran backwards in the New Madrid, Missouri, what the fault's named after. That means that, imagine this thing could open up and the water's actually flowing backwards, could draw the sea right into it and do what? Divide our land. Madrid Quartet, Madrid fault, is it a coincidence? God, I hope so. I really do. These are sobering times. We don't want to be involved in dividing God's land up and being a part of the beast. That is the revealing of what's happening here right now. It's a frightening but sobering time to be alive. But know that even in this time, it's God's plan. These are the things that are written. We're not going to change the things that are written. And we really don't want to. I think Peter tried to make that mistake by saying, no, Lord, you're not going to be crucified. But the crucifixion was the perfect plan for the plan of salvation for us. What if all these things coming about are actually a plan for our salvation? It's for the return of Christ himself. So we don't want to find ourselves fighting against the plan of God. But we certainly do not want to find ourselves joining the plan of the dragon. So we need to stay very close to God right now, because the Word clearly says that all who are not saved, who do not believe that Jesus Christ is the one way, that He is God and He's the life and the truth and the way, that all who do not believe that are going to be deceived. So the beast is at work right now, and you can see it. Turn on your TV and watch it. Notice that the things they're saying, do you believe it? Does it sound like deception? Are they deceived or are they deceivers? We don't know. But we certainly can look at the beast and understand a little bit more of what's going on. So the next message, if I can put this thing together, that's in my heart to teach, is on the agenda. You recognize the beast by his agenda and his narrative. He has an agenda, a plan, and the narrative. What's the narrative? It's that which is an imitation of truth. Because he doesn't believe truth. Truth, of course, is what God says. So therefore, the narrative is what the dragon says. But it's very consistent. It lays out it lays out consistency as best it can, and then uses it and imposes it as truth upon people. I think Karl Marx said it the best: my object in life is to dethrone God and destroy capitalism. So next we'll try to look and understand the beast by his narrative and his agenda. So thank you. Hope to see you next time.